Hello everyone, in this video we will create an exercise on fallback and receive functions. Fallback and receive functions, they let our contract to receive ether under some circumstances, and to understand those circumstances and also to understand the difference between fallback and receive, we must first understand msg.data. Msg.data is a special variable which contains information about the function that we are calling. In this case, it will contain information about the name of the function that we are calling, which is also called function selector, plus its arguments. And when you are calling a function in a contract, you are actually sending some data to the contract. And in this case, the data is the function name plus the arguments that you are passing. And this data is called call data. And msg.data is a representation of call data. So you can think message of data as the same thing as call data. So now let's go back to our topic where we can use fallback. Fallback is used when msg.data is not empty but the function that you are calling does not exist, or when the msg.data is not empty, the function that you are calling exists but the parameters are wrong. For example, the number of parameters can be wrong or the type of parameters can be wrong. Or in a third situation, which shouldn't happen actually, because I told you that you need to have fallback and receive at the same time. But in cases where you will not have receive and where the msg.data is empty, still fallback will be triggered. And in those cases, when the fallback is triggered, it will take the ether from the sender, and the contract will basically take the ether. That's going to be the effect of it. And on the other hand, receive function is used when msg.data is empty. Okay. And the second difference between fallback and receive is receive function has a default 2300 gas limit, and fallback function also has the same default value, but in case of fallback function, this value, it can be specified by the sender. So what does this mean is that if the sender is gonna try to call a more complicated function, then it might cost the sender more gas than 2300. So in other words, fallback function can become more expensive than receive function. And the third thing here is that fallback function is very flexible. As you can see, we can use it in these three situations. On the other hand, receive function, we can use it only in one situation. And for that reason, fallback function is more flexible, but that flexibility also brings vulnerability. And on the other hand, receive function has less flexibility, has less functionality, as we have talked here. And for that reason, there is less vulnerability if you use receive function. And more than that, I guess we talked about all of them. We must declare them as payable because that's the purpose of them. If you are not going to declare fallback and receive as payable, then there is no need to use them at all, and you need to use them together. And I think that's all about it. So now let's create a simple example with that we can see how to use fallback and receive. We will first create a fallback function and later a receive function, and it must be external and it must be payable. Okay, and later, to understand which function here is triggered, we will create an event here. So we will say event log something, string function name, bytes function data. So now we can actually emit something. If fallback is triggered, it will emit fallback keyword plus msg.data, because we have talked that in case of fallback, message of data may not be empty, which means that we can access some information here. But in case of receive, msg.data will be empty, and for that reason we can leave it empty here, and we will also just say receive. And more than that, we can also put a function to see the balance of the contract, and that will complete our exercise. So now let's compile and deploy. So to trigger receive, I will just be sending some value here, let's say 1 ether, and I just need to click on this transact. This is the call data area. As you can see, I am leaving it empty. So if I click on it, it's green tick. If I check the balance, you see it's 1 ether. And now let's do the same thing for fallback. So I will just this time make it 2 ethers, and to trigger fallback I must pass something here. So I'm randomly saying 1a, 2b, 3c, and now if I transact, it worked. And now let's expand this area to see which function is triggered. So in the first case, you see it's receive, as you can see here, and in the second case it's fallback. So that's how you can use fallback and receive, and see you next time. Bye bye.